Greetings and welcome back to room 303 and our talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. And we turn now in the Children of Adam section to the little poem, Once I Passed Through a Populous City. Now this is a fascinating little poem for a number of reasons. Notice the elided verb past and the spelling of that to try and capture again that nuance of American speech patterns. I was fascinated a number of years ago to be in a colleague's house, and on the wall there was a quote by Walt Whitman, and the quote said, "We were together, I forget the rest." And then it said Walt Whitman. And I turned to my colleague and I said, "Oh, it's funny, I've read Leaves of Grass once or twice in my life, and I can't remember this line." And he said, "Well, you might want to look it up." And sure enough, I did, and the line was purported to have come from this poem. However, the line actually doesn't read, "We were together, I forget the rest." It is, "We were together, all else has long been forgotten by me." Now, if you Google this, you will see that "We were together, I forget the rest," Walt Whitman, is very, very popular. And in fact, lots of people probably have this quote on a t-shirt or on a poster or something like that. It is fascinating, the misquoting that happens for this poem, and yet I find that remarkable. Now, my assumption is that you've been with us at learnstrong.net, down the left-hand side, Talks with Walt there, and you've been with us from the inscription poem all the way through poems, all the way through native moments, which we have done just recently. Now, the background of this poem is fascinating. Norton's will tell us that this poem was number 9 of the original Children of Adam group. It has remained unchanged through all of the editions. However, there are some manuscripts that in fact tell us that certain lines of this poem have been significantly altered, and it will change, in fact, the reading of this poem. Early biographers will reference this New Orleans trip that Whitman and his brother Jeff took February to May of 1848 to New Orleans as being somehow a romance. However, there are some manuscript lines that have not made it into this poem that read like this, quote, "But now of all that city, I remember only the man who wandered with me there for love of me." And then as well, quote, "I remember, I say, only one rude and ignorant man." Now that's, again, going to change the complexion of this poem quite a bit. Let's just read the poem now as we are going to exegete together. "Once I passed through a populous city, imprinting my brain for future use with its shows, architectures, customs, traditions. Yet now of all that city, I remember only a woman I casually met there who detained me for love of me. Day by day and night by night we were together. All else has long been forgotten by me. I remember, I say, only that woman who passionately clung to me. Again we wander, we love, we separate again. Again she holds me by the hand. I must not go. I see her close beside me with silent lips, sad and tremulous." Now, Whitman was very influenced by phrenology and this word, amantivis, that idea of love of women and men, and of course it makes sense in the Children of Adam section that he's celebrating this kind of amative love. So we'll play the game. Can we first start with the word once? Of course, Whitman, guys, I keep telling you, I really believe that while he wrote so many of these poems, he had to have been smiling, knowing the games that he was playing. When you hear the word once, you of course immediately think about the famed Once Upon a Time. And of course we're playing with this idea. Once he says, I passed through a populous city. Of course here we're thinking about New Orleans and the 1848 trip that he took. You'll remember that he went down there to be chief editor of the Crescent. He went down there with his brother Jeff. And there's all kinds of stories that come back from this very brief time that he was in New Orleans. We've talked about this in earlier intro lectures. I want to go to the word imprinting. Once I passed through a populous city, imprinting my brain for future use. Now this word imprinting is the only time this word gets used in all of Leaves of Grass. By the way, we're going to have this 3 times in this poem. Words that are significant words only get used this one time in Leaves of Grass. I think this is really what Whitman thinks of great poets, of great artists. They have this tendency, we'll think here, of course, about Wordsworth and his lyrical ballads intro essay. We've given lectures elsewhere at LearnStrong.net about this as well. The idea that you have these experiences and then they imprint in some way. Notice for Whitman it's his brain, we would of course say mind, right? For future use. And then notice, what is it that he's imprinting from his time in New Orleans, if that's in fact what he's referencing? Shows, architecture, customs, traditions, right? All of these will be significant. Yet, now, notice how he's coming to this present moment. All that city, I remember only a woman. Again, change, obviously, the language from previous lines. Only a woman I casually met. By the way, this is the only time the word casually gets used in all of Leaves of Grass. Met there, who detained me. Again, you notice the elided verb of detained me, for love of me. Day by day, night by night, we were together, and of course the famous, I forget the rest, the line that's become so popular is not the way he actually writes it. Notice the use of the dash, which reminds us of Emily Dickinson. All else has long been forgotten by me. Of course, I forget the rest is a far more powerful way to actually write the line, isn't it? In other words, the imprinting, everything that has been imprinted, I remember, everything else has been forgotten. And then he comes back to this notion of remembrance. I remember, I say, only that woman who passionately clung to me. Clung is the only use in all of Leaves of Grass. Isn't that fascinating, right? Again, notice the repetition of the word again and again here. Again, we wander, making us think about the times that the word wander 4 times gets used in Children of Adam poems, right? Again, to think of wonder, we immediately think of Odysseus and his Penelope, don't we? We love, we separate again. Notice the repetitions again of this word. Again, she holds me by the hand. We immediately think of our last lines from Milton's Paradise Lost. Go back to our lecture of that very last set of lines in Paradise Lost as Adam and Eve are leaving, holding hand in hand. I think Whitman's doing a whole lot of stuff here as he's playing games at 3A. She again holds me by the hand. I must not go. Again, we must think about Odysseus as he must have left his Penelope, right? She would be begging him not to leave. I see her. Notice the use of this I see. All the way through Leaves of Grass, there is this kind of seeming reference to photography and this idea that what I can see, what has been imprinted, right? Remember, Whitman was himself a printer, wasn't he? I see her close beside me, back to Milton and the final lines of Paradise Lost, with silent lips, sad and tremulous. Notice how there's no commas there at all in those last words. Of course, tremulous makes us think of pent-up aching rivers as well as spontaneous me. Very popular word in the Children of Adam section, right? Notice that this is a poem that is at one time pleased with the memory, but also somehow maybe nostalgic and sad about the memory as well. Well, what are we going to do now at 2A with major messages and themes here? Well, obviously, a beautiful memory is something worth holding on to. Now, clearly, for Whitman, that's the case. At 2B, again, all of the words that only get used one time in Leaves of Grass, imprinting, casually clung. At 3A, well, in many ways, we could argue this poem is going to prepare us for the Calamus section that will be coming. I've mentioned, of course, Milton's Paradise Lost, and I think so much, as I've said to you before, I think so much of what Whitman is doing in Leaves of Grass is predicated on his love and study of Milton's Paradise Lost, right? But think of all the great love and lover poems that come to mind. I'll just mention John Donne's Valediction Forbidding Morning. Go back and take a look at our lectures on that poem and the brilliance of the way that I think Whitman is playing around with much of Valediction Forbidding Morning. Finally, at 3B, what is your favorite memory of a love of the past? And when you call that memory up from your being imprinted, right, what is it that most you'll remember that's most significant? Another question, what have you been imprinted with? I hope that your study of Leaves of Grass is in fact doing this for you. For example, can you remember where you read some of these poems? What was the place where you were when you read them? Read these poems and travel with them. They will imprint on you. Thank you.